Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the Confusianity podcast. In episode 1, I and my buddy Tommy, both of us preacher's kids, shared our respective stories of leaving Christianity. For episode 2, I interviewed my friend Damien, and although we start with a brief chat about his upbringing in a Catholic environment, we take the conversation elsewhere, delving deeply into several topics, including herd mentality, free will, social media, politics, consciousness, and ultimately the meaning of life, or lack thereof. We cover a lot of ground in episode 2, so I'll keep this intro short. Let's just get right into it. So, Damien, do you want to tell me a little bit about your background in terms of thoughts and experiences with religion?
I guess a quick rundown. Born in Jamaica, went to Catholic school. Family could afford that. Born into a family that I guess they were Catholic religious. So yeah, went to Catholic school up until middle of 5th grade. And middle of 5th grade is when we moved to the United States and went back to Catholic school. Sundays it was church, but then with my dad's side that I mainly lived with, we had stopped going to church on Sundays. But whenever I visited my mom, we were always going to church on Sundays. I guess that's my religious experience. Like the Catholic school that I went to. Each grade in the morning had to read a Bible verse at the morning assembly, and at the end of the day, it's the same thing as well. Yeah, I had a few questions about the Bible because I thought it was inconsistent and very punishing heavy.
That stood out to you as a kid. Everything to do with sort of hell and punishment, like that particularly stood out to you?
Yeah, because I didn't understand the point of hell, and I was confused with heaven as well. So I didn't understand the point of either one of them.
Did you raise those questions as a kid to the teachers or the did you have like nuns teaching or?
I don't know if there were nuns or not. Some had the whole nun outfit sometimes.
That would probably make them a nun, I would think.
Maybe.
If they're wearing the outfit.
Maybe not. Like just because a guy has a police uniform outfit doesn't make him a policeman.
Well, it's illegal to impersonate an officer.
But it's not illegal to impersonate a nun, is it?
You think there's that many people out there impersonating nuns?
Not to that degree, but if there's money involved, people would impersonate anything. Because you have to pay to go to the Catholic school, so you could just have the teachers dressed as nuns, but they're not really nuns. But the school is still affiliated with receiving money for a church.
Okay.
They could just be there.
Okay. Well, so back to my question, so for whoever these people are who are teaching you, whether they're legit nuns or not, did you raise these kind of questions? Like you're confused about the point of heaven or the point of hell. Did you raise those questions back then?
Yeah, I raised other questions too, but yeah, you're usually just sent to the principal's office, and it's usually lashings and then go home.
Jeez. For asking questions.
Yeah.
That must have really sucked for you, because I know you, and you're the kind of guy who's very inquisitive and asks a lot of questions. You're trying.
Yep.
Man, that sucks.
Yeah, so I guess that's where I developed the go sit and think and look at flowers.
Wait, what?
Go sit and think and look at flowers.
Okay, that's what they wanted you to do?
No, that's what I ended up doing. Because the house that we lived in had a garden in the back and a garden in the front, like a small garden.
Okay.
So it was a pretty big yard and everything too.
So was it like a phase, or did you feel like you were getting punished a lot? Like, because I kind of wonder about sort of the negative reinforcement, right? Like, you're inquisitive, you have questions, you ask them, then you get punished. And if that happens over a period of time, I would think you would, over time, they would kind of beat it out of you, right? Like you realize like, well, I don't want to get punished, so I'm going to stop asking questions and things like that. Is that how it played out?
No. I'm kind of like, you know the kids that like they would get electrocuted if they put like a fork in a socket?
Yeah, okay.
So like some kids will stop putting the fork in the socket. Other kids won't. And then you have the other kids that will tell that kid that enjoy putting the fork in the socket, put it in again. I want to figure out how the socket works. I'm
right.
the one that's telling the kid to put it in there again because I want to know how the socket works.
Okay. All right. But you don't want to be the one yourself sticking it in.
Well, like, if I don't have, like, another person there to put the fork in the socket, then I'll just do it myself.
Right. But ideally, it's somebody else suffering the cost of it, and you're just learning from it.
Yeah, if there's, like, a whole bunch of pain involved.
Right.
So, like, yeah, like, with me, with the punishments, so all that happened was I just learned, okay, they're not going to answer my questions, and just try to see if I could figure out the question.
Oh, figure things out for yourself, basically.
Yeah.
Do your own independent research. And how old were you at this time?
That was like second grade. Second or third grade.
Still pretty young. Like what, like 8 or 9 or something like that? 10?
Well, I came when I was 10, so I was in 5th grade when I was 10.
Okay. So this is even younger than that then.
Yeah, like
okay.
6 or 7.
Wow, okay. So you've always kind of been this way. You've always been kind of this deep thinker and like inquisitive and curious.
Yeah, I've always been curious of things, and I just kind of want to know how things work. And here's a good example. It's pretty stupid as well. I jumped off the roof holding an umbrella to see if it would work.
Oh my God.
I would float down. I did not float down.
Oh my God. Did you break your leg or something?
No, but I was in a lot of pain afterwards.
Jesus, dude. So how old were you then? Like also 6, 7?
Probably about 7 or 8.
Wow. I hope it wasn't too high. Like a 2-story house or something?
Yeah, it's probably from like the, it wouldn't be more than 2. I would have broken something.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, but I didn't really think it would hurt.
Well, you learned the hard way.
Like, I thought, like, okay, at least, if it doesn't work, at least the umbrella would do something to help.
I think we're going to need a bigger umbrella.
Yeah, and, well, that was my conclusion afterwards.
Right.
I need a bigger and more sturdy umbrella.
Right. But I'm guessing you probably never tried that experiment again.
No, because I didn't have access to a bigger, sturdier umbrella.
Right. If only they sold bigger umbrellas, maybe you would have. But... Nice. All right. So you're going to this Catholic school. You have questions. They punish you for it. So you kind of learn to keep your mouth shut, at least in those contexts. And at the same time, you start kind of independently doing your own research to find answers to your questions. Do you remember back to those days in terms of what those questions were and what kind of answers you arrived at on your own? I'm trying to think how you would even come to your own conclusions, because there's no internet, there's no like all these resources that we have today. So how does one, as a 6 or 7-year-old in Jamaica, do independent research about heaven and hell, and like how does that even happen?
Well, it was a gradual thing, because it was basically a number of days, and whenever my thought would drift to it, it would be thought processes. And that's what I still do. I still do that now, is where like there would be a certain question, and I would have thought processes on that question go through my head. And if I formulate other questions, those questions I would go and ask people those questions. And
So when you say people, do you mean adults at the time or
yeah,
peers?
adults, peers, the same teachers and everything, because like you could ask for information on a question by getting pieces together. So it's not a direct question on the exact thing that you want.
Sure.
And that's,
Did you find that that was safer? Like you wouldn't get in trouble for that if you're just asking indirect questions?
yeah. So if you ask indirect questions to multiple people, each individual will get a different indirect question. You could feasibly get to the right answer
Okay.
or get to an answer.
Like
And
you would have preferred going direct, but that wasn't going to work because you were getting
yeah.
punished for that.
hmm
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, I kept asking indirect questions where it should lead to the same answer, but I never got the same answer. And that's when I said, well, like, if everyone's giving different answers to what's supposed to be written and the law, then,
You mean like what's in the Bible?
yeah,
Okay.
then what's in there is nothing.
Right. Well, clearly there's a discrepancy, and as a kid, you're trying to figure out like it's not as black and white and straightforward as they were making it out to be.
Exactly.
Right.
So when people are presenting things as black and white and it's not, then what any intelligent person should do is, well, like, question it.
Right. Yeah. See, I think you're kind of, from what I'm hearing already, like you're kind of more in the minority, I would say, because I think most kids, and in some degree most people, most adults in general, like we don't want to make waves, we don't want to rock the boat because it makes our lives harder. And let's face it, life is hard for everybody. So I think the tendency for most people is to minimize the difficulty level in life. And that often means kind of swallowing your, pride or your questions or and just going with the flow, getting on board with the program. And
Yeah.
yeah. Because the thing that, I don't know, like I always kind of think about children and when I was a child and religion and these influences because it's such a formative time in a person's life, that first 7 years of life. It's like the experiences and the lessons and the things that are taught to a child, they stay with a person for the rest of their life. So, Christians will look at that in the church, like Christian parents, and they have their kid dedicated and all these things. It's like they're brainwashing their child into a certain belief system. And this is what happens. They wouldn't call it brainwashing, of course, but they would call it, raising the child up in the fear of the Lord, or, just, raising a righteous, next generation of Christian or whatever. So however you phrase it, but the fact of the matter is they're instilling a certain set of beliefs and values in a child. And children are very susceptible to influences and information. There's only a few people in a child's life, basically the parents and whoever at school. That's basically it. And especially before the days of internet and TV and media and all this stuff, like the only influences you have are your parents and your peers a little bit, and your teachers. So it's such an important time, and children are like sponges, right? Like just absorbing all of this information that they're fed from the elders or whatever. But at the same time, it's a tragedy because kids are so naturally curious, So, and you're a prime example of that with what you were just describing, because you were hungry for information, you were hungry for truth, you were hungry for, exploration, knowledge, and that was denied to you, even though you're in the prime time of, because you're a sponge, as a little kid. You're like you absorb information. We all do it more as kids. It's much harder as adults. And it was unfortunate because it was like a wasted opportunity. Instead of them filling you with all this information, they punished you for it.
Yeah, so, like your early years, yeah, they're formative, but it's kind of like learning how to solve a math problem. Like you need to know the ground rules first before you can solve those problems, and that's kind of what those first 7 years are. But the problem that I see is that you can't limit yourself to those first 7 years. You have to try to unlearn things and then learn things again, and keep doing that process.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just saying that's really much harder for people, though. I guess I'm describing the ideal situation is while a child is this absorbent sponge from age 0 to 7, hopefully they have the best possible experiences and they're exposed to the widest range of knowledge and learn skills and languages, all of that in the 7 years. So obviously that's an ideal that falls short for most everybody, but it just sucks when these systems, and largely religious systems, actually go the opposite direction,
Yeah, and like if you look at all these systems, just kind of look at what they were made for, and
well, yeah, conformity.
They easy to break down and see. Okay, this what they're telling you, like the outcome of this, it's not. It's more like there's some other reason why this is built this way.
Right. There's some agenda.
Yeah. And that's what I've come to understand, and it's that just made me like go through other thought processes again and again. And I guess like that's could be contributed to why I enjoy learning a whole bunch of stuff that I try to learn, because I've just been that way since I was younger, and now that I'm older, I have more access to things. So sometimes when I'm not lazy or anything like that, I'll pick up, I'm interested in this, so I'll try to learn more about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that explains sort of a lot about who you are and how you think and how you came to be that way, I guess, that you've always kind of been that way. But like the the religion thing almost seemed kind of an impediment getting in your way of sort of independent thought and learning, right?
I would say it was like in the way and kind of helped at the same time, since everybody around me was heavily religious at that time.
Okay.
And like when certain kids found out about my middle name, they didn't want to play with me, and some parents didn't allow them to play with me. That's how religious those neighborhoods were.
Wow, because you're like a son of Satan or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
So like the questions I had about like heaven and hell was like, well, what are the thresholds of like going to hell? What is the threshold? Because I could understand with certain situations, that person would go to hell, but what's the threshold where you're kind of like, I don't know, like that's kind of on the line. So what happens to the people that are on the line between heaven and hell?
Wait. So did you not get the message? Did you not get the memo on this? That the whole thing that Christianity preaches is it doesn't matter how good you are. Like there isn't this, like you got to try harder to be a better person and get across that line. I don't know if you've heard a different version of it as a child, but that's certainly not the Christianity I was raised with. The Christianity I was raised with was, you are not good enough. Don't even try, because you're not going to make it on your own goodness. You're a sinner. You're worthy of burning hellfire for eternity. The only way you can be saved is to believe in Jesus, that he died for your sins. That's the only thing that can save you. So it's nothing of your own merit. It's nothing of how good of a person you are, because you're not good enough. Only Christ is good enough. And that's why you'll be saved and go to heaven, is because of what Christ did. It has nothing to do with how good you are or how hard you try. Is that not the message you received?
No, not totally. Like, I heard that version as well. It depends on the church that you went to and the different parts of the island. Like, since my mom moved around a few times, certain churches did preach that way, other churches didn't. The Catholic school I went to didn't preach that way. It was more about being good, wait for the calling to go to heaven, and you're judged on your sins and the people around you. So, like, I feel that
Wow.
one was more towards converting workers and slaves into being peaceful. That was that religion that was given to the island. And then there was the other area that was more white. They were more well off than we were, and I was considering us well off for Jamaican standards as well. But their church was preaching differently as well, and it was more towards that. And then
Was that also Catholicism or was that Protestant?
I think that's more. I would think that's more Protestant.
Yeah, because I was raised within Protestantism, so
Yeah.
what you were just describing is kind of foreign to me.
Yeah, I was more Catholic.
Okay.
And, like, I still thought that, okay, then if that's the case, then why create people like that?
What do you mean?
Because, like, one of the other things too was, like, we were created in his image. I was like, okay, then, like, if we're created, then the whole heaven and hell thing, and then you're not good enough, then this person that's creating something has some major flaws.
If we're created in his image and we're so flawed, that therefore that must mean that he's flawed?
Either that, because it was one of the two things. It was that, either that deity is flawed, or he basically fucked up with his experiment and just left it.
Well, what's interesting in the Bible, you do see when, like, the flood, for example, right? Like, God is literally, like, washes his hands of this, and he's just like, kind of like, I done fucked up. You all are so fucked up, terrible. I'm going to just destroy all of you.
Yeah.
Like,
And, like, if you think about the possible, like, I guess I learned about that later, the possible area, like, where that flood had taken place. Yeah, when they see a flood like that, they would think that the world is ending because they don't really go out too far. So when, like, if you're on an area where you think is all land, there's no shoreline, and then all of a sudden the entire area is filled with water, you think it's a flood. You think it's like the entire world drowning. But it's not. It's just your area just got shitted on.
right. Well, it's funny, though, because it's kind of sort of an arrogance to think that whatever is happening to us is basically what's happening to the entire planet. But back then they didn't have science, they didn't have maps, they didn't have understanding of the round planet and everything else happening elsewhere in the world. So to them it felt like if we die, that's the end of humanity or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, it's just another point of their level of ignorance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But this is the Bible that people are reading now in 2019 and heeding every word of it. Like, I'm like,
exactly.
It's just ridiculous that you're trying to base your modern day decisions and thinking on a book written thousands of years ago or compiled randomly and translated by all these different people and And
certain books not included.
right. It's just a mess.
Yeah,
And
it reminded me of the other question I had. Like, I asked, well, how do you know that this was translated correctly?
right.
Because at that time, I realized that I couldn't spell. Because I was learning British English and regular English, and I didn't know which spelling was correct, and I never really got any of the spellings correct anyway.
You were wrong with both British and American English.
Yeah. So my question was, well, like, when I try to write a sentence, it doesn't come across too well if something is misspelled. So coming from another language, and I didn't know anything about Old English at the time. So you're coming from another language to Old English to modern English, and there's going to be a lot of things lost in translation.
Yeah, of course. I was just having that conversation yesterday with someone about the Bible, and we were actually reviewing some of Genesis, and I was explaining to her that, because she was kind of breaking down each word, and I was like, yeah, that's fine, that's great, but that's just the one particular NIV that we're reading right now. There are like a million other versions that use different words that are key words that have completely different meanings in today's language. So, I was explaining to her how important it is for the true biblical scholars to learn Greek and Hebrew and all that, to really get more of the accurate, like, original text or the original words. But even that is like...
Yeah, that doesn't even account for
slang, and the fact that a lot of these were oral traditions back then. So there were stories passed down, by people just telling the stories, and one person to the next. And then later on, when people learn to write in Hebrew or Greek or whatever, then they're written down. But, it's like a game of telephone that happened over hundreds of years to get to that point.
And somebody just being like, I don't want to write all this. This is like what it basically is.
Right. You got one lazy writer.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, these are the things that are so ridiculous that your average Christian does not do any research into this, and your average Christian doesn't even think about these things. And even when I was a Christian, like, I didn't think so deeply about these things. But it's all right there if you really just go deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah.
And
for me, I didn't really only see it to religion as well, to be honest. I saw a lot of contradictions with a lot of different things. So the same thing that I applied to religion, I applied to other things. And some things I realized that I was just like, okay, I don't really care. Just going to be in the dark. But then when that thing that I left in the dark affects me, then I feel it's like it's my wasted opportunity where I had the chance to go and learn more about that, and I didn't. So that also gives me a drive to try to learn a little bit more on different things, or just know the right questions to ask, and know when I'm being asked a question where I'm only set up to answer the question in two ways. So, and that was the formula thing, like when we had that discussion about free will, like the question that's posed to you in free will is to believe or not believe. And my question was, well, why do I have to believe or not believe?
Wait. You mean believe or not believe in the concept of free will? Being like, no. Do we have free will or not?
Believe or not believe in, or to love or not love God or Christ or whatever. Like, the question is formed in that way. And I'm like, well, is that free will? Like, you're giving me basically a true-false question.
Yeah, I mean, I would think about it politically, right? So it's like, are you going to vote for Hillary Clinton or are you going to vote for Donald Trump? You know, and it's like, that's supposed to sum up your political views and aspirations,
Exactly.
like this one or that one. And it's like, that's not really a choice, you know? I'm not too happy about that choice.
Yeah.
Because I pretty much disagree with them on pretty much everything. Both of them.
Yeah. So it's like when the question is framed that way, then that frames up the rest of the conversation.
Right.
And I try to make sure that whenever I catch something that's framed that way, I also ask a question. Well, what is behind that question, or let's elaborate on that question.
Right.
Delve a little bit more, because what questions like that are is just skimming the surface. So it's like, for me, when I thought more about free will, it's more of a freedom to do a lot of things. But right now it's just framed. I'm in a sandbox. I could only play in that sandbox when there's like a whole bunch of other sand outside of the box.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we had that conversation on New Year's Eve, and it was really interesting to me because I've been living in Christian circles for so long, and the conversation was always free will or predestination, free will or predestination, which is it? And outside of the Christian circles, nobody even talks about it because, like, why would an atheist or an agnostic or whatever talk about free will? It's just not in the conversations that they have. So when you mention about how you define free will and saying that we don't actually have free will because we don't have true freedom to do whatever our heart or mind would want to do, that was interesting to me because you kind of redefine what free will even means.
Yeah. Well, like, it's kind of like when my eyes opened up to framing it like that, it was more that, okay, it was kind of a question of what is free will? And people always told me, whenever I asked the question, they were like, well, I'm free to go outside, I'm free to go to the store and get something. I was like, no, that's just like an action that's part of something that's already there. So it's still kind of like in the confines of something. And when I started thinking more and more about it, like, I started including, like, well, what are the things that I can't do because of my confines?
Mm-hmm.
And
well, like the limits of time and space, basically.
Yeah. So those limits are making my confines. I'm seeing the edges of this box that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that means that, okay, I'm in a box. So my ability to do anything is within that confine. So it's basically like I'm on a house arrest.
Right. In this body, in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, that's not freedom. And you could lessen the confine even more and even more, where you go down to politics and social issues. You break the confines down to that, and that's even less freedom when you do that.
Right.
And that was basically like, that was the thought process I ended up to. That, yeah, honestly, we don't have free will, because if everyone had the true limits of freedom that we're confined to, well, we would be even more remessed than we are now.
Wait a minute. So if there was a such thing as free will, you think it would lead to complete chaos, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in a way, it's actually a good thing that we have these parameters as human beings in this world.
Yes, because no one of us can do everything. No one of us can hunt, clean, um, get shelter, like, consistently. No one of us can do that. So, like, we have to have, like, a social decorum. Like, okay, we have to act in a certain way to be social with each other in order for us to help each other go further. Because I don't, like, whenever someone tells me, like, they did stuff alone, I always question that as well. I even questioned that when I said that. Yeah, I learned this stuff on my own. It's like, no, there's been a lot of research before, and that helped me with learning more things to get my train of thought. I don't have to go out and hunt, so, like, I just go to the supermarket to pick up food. Everything is delivered to the supermarket.
Right. Humanity, it's all interconnected, and very much that community aspect.
Mm-hmm. So, like, if you base it down to just absolute freedom within the confines that we're stuck in, I think there would be just more people just, either the population would go up or down, because more people would die from stupidity.
Or people just murdering anybody else if they could.
Exactly.
And in a sense, it would be like anarchy.
Yeah. And that's, like, because I watched a speech by Bannon, and
by who?
He was also on Bannon. He was Trump's.
Oh, Steve Bannon?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was also a guest moderator on. I always watched the Monk debates every year, and he was a guest on there to debate about putting government in anarchy. They believe government shouldn't be there, and I'm on the other side where, yeah, I think government needs to be there because.
Well, yeah, I believe in limited government. We need to have some involvement, but I just feel like there's so much overreach that I think we could definitely stand to do with less government.
Well, I don't know if there's overreach on certain areas, but I think there's been too many intricate laws that don't do anything, that just helps people hide money.
Yeah, there's that too.
And that's my issue more with government, because, like, they'll say, okay, we'll create a law that fix certain issue that happened, and nobody ever calls them out on it. And, well, this law doesn't fix anything. This law is just there to make it look like you fix something, and it's actually makes it easy for the people that cause the problem to still be able to cause the problem. Right. So that's also another thing with, like you said, like, an overreaching power. It's more that the people there are just, okay, let's just do this for ourselves, do this to appease the public. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's so many things about politics that frustrate me, but one is just the grandstanding and how everything is just optics, and politicians only do things in order to get reelected. Yeah. And every year, basically, they're always thinking about the election cycle and, like, how they're going to get reelected, and it's
and
almost.
That's how I feel with the Catholic Church and churches in general.
How so?
Because I feel that it's gotten to be that it's so much politics involved, and it's not recent. It's from eons ago that it's just become about politics. Because before, people couldn't read, and the church didn't want people to read.
Right. Like, one of the things I want to do with Confusianity is actually inform people, believers, Christians, about the early church, how the church came to be the church, how Christianity even came to be Christianity in the first place. Because a lot of that stuff was very eye-opening for me. It wasn't necessarily the main reason why I left religion, but it definitely contributed to it. I mean, when you read things about people having to pay penance, and like poor people, peasant class, the proletariat basically being told after they die they're going to go to purgatory or hell or whatever, and they need to pay to the church, even to pay for loved ones who already died, to pay for their souls. I'm like, wow, what a classic rip-off Ponzi scheme or whatever.
Yeah, that's the first Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
First pyramid scheme.
Right. And this is the early church. This is where it all came from. So you can't deny that. If something has a rotten core, fine, it's going to evolve and church policies change. Like I know with the Mormon church, they didn't used to let anybody black in, or like, all these kind of things. And then, or like no gays or whatever. And then now what they kind of got with the times a little bit, and now they're letting them in. But it's almost like they're concessions. It's not what they really ideally truly wanted in the beginning, But when you look at these things as being their core faith, or the truest, rawest form of the religion, as being so twisted and wrong.
Well,
It's like, why even go with a modified form of it, a softened form of it?
Well, isn't that what Christianity is? A modified form of Judaism?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was started by Jews. Yeah, that's how it was born out of Judaism. Yeah. Right.
And it's Judaism, like Judaism and Islam were the first two. So it's basically you're a derivative of Islam and Judaism.
Right. Have you heard of, is it Zoroastrianism? Something like that? I can't pronounce it, but Zoroastrianism?
No.
So I was...
like Zealotism?
No, I was doing some research into this, and I was watching some very interesting videos on the early church, how Christianity was born, basically, and how Judaism ended up borrowing from a lot of these other religions and pagan religions.
Yeah.
And one of those was Zoroastrianism. And forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, but I know it starts with a Z and it's something like that. But it's just really interesting because a lot of the stuff from Zoroastrianism is like you die and there's a heaven and a hell, and then there's a evil force and a good force, right? So, and all of those things got adapted into this new Christian religion that was born from Judaism, but it mixed in a lot of these other pagan faiths. So the more I learn about this, the more I'm like, it's really interesting. But nobody would know about this in the church nowadays. How would they ever know about this unless you go and do your own independent research? Because, of course, they'll never mention anything remotely like this at all in church. I went to church for like 30 years, 31, 32 years. And it's just the same cycle of 8 sermons all year round. You got a sermon on tithing. You got a sermon on lust. You got a sermon on, loving, turning the other cheek. And sermon on don't have any idols, don't worship money, blah, blah, blah. And just like God is your all. And it's like the same 10 sermons that are just preached over and over again. And it frustrates me looking back on all the time that was wasted. Because I even felt it, even when I was a Christian. The last few years, I just feel like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of going to church and showing up? I mean, in New York at Redeemer Presbyterian, it's basically like a social club. And I was interested in learning more and getting deeper in the faith or whatever, but, most of my peers, most everybody there was like, it's a meat market, and people are thinking, after the service, people rarely got into an in-depth discussion about the sermon or anything. Instead, it's like, oh, where are we going to go for brunch? So, it is what it is, but it's just, I don't know. It's just, I feel like I needed to get more out of religion than most people there, because I went to a church that was mostly white and Korean, and everybody was just getting together, and I'm just this random Indian guy And the only thing I have in common with them there really is the faith. And if the faith really didn't matter to them so much, then it put me at a disadvantage because I didn't fit into their buckets of what they're looking for, in their social expectations, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing myself a huge disservice because I belonged more with independent, free-thinking, artist-type people. And that's ultimately, where I went, and that's why I'm so much happier now. But
I guess that's the thing where, like, my opinion on religion is, like, I'm not held to any religion, so it's not one or the other or anything like that. It's more that I understand religion, and I understand, like, there probably needs to be some kind of religion out there, or multiple, because it helps with that community aspect, and it helps with certain people need that thing to help them develop and last through their life.
yeah, but I would argue, why does it have to be religion? Because religion is rooted. All of these religions are rooted in these ancient myths and stories.
Yes, and also cons.
Sure, right. So, like, one thing I was just having a little debate with Brian yesterday, and I was saying, I didn't even get around to finishing making this point with him. We were just texting about it, but I was saying, let's say there's a nuclear whatever, and humanity is obliterated, but let's just say there's like 20 children or 50 children or whatever, or let's say 100. So there's 100 children. Somehow they're able to find food and take care of themselves. So they're of an age. But these are also children, let's say, who haven't been taught any religion, right? So let's just say somehow they're old enough to take care of themselves, but they're blank slates, right? So they know nothing. They have known nothing about Muhammad, Christ, Catholicism, Buddhism. They know nothing about that.
I guarantee you a religion will be created.
Interesting.
It won't necessarily be anything that we understand now, but I guarantee you a religion will be created.
Right. Okay. So I don't disagree with you. I would say Jesus would no longer exist, though, and Muhammad would no longer exist.
Jesus or Hamed.
No, it would. I think probably what would happen is, because this is like young children, like Lord of the Flies, really.
Yeah.
They would definitely establish hierarchies. There would be leaders. There would be followers. There would be power plays. There would be abuses. And I think, like, did you ever read Animal Farm?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be like that. You would be, power structures over time, and the might is right. The bigger kids would maybe bully the weaker ones and this and that, and people would make up some shit. And but it would be different, though. So was your argument?
It would be the same.
Well, was your argument more so that people would invent some kind of religion, even though the religion would be completely different than what we have now, the set of religions?
Yes, and my main reason for saying that is because those kids won't be able to. There's no one to guide them on controlling their emotions, their fears, what they see, and how to interpret what they see.
Well, exactly. Plus, the thing is they would be blown back to the Stone Age or whatever, so they wouldn't even know internet and satellites and technology and digital. Like, they'd have to start all over again.
Yeah,
and like when the sun comes up, they might
have to come down to fully starting over again like that. It's just that they're dealing with all those things that they don't understand, and you're contributing that to, okay, I'm making something angry, or I did this and this caused this to happen.
Right. My point is
higher being.
It would lead them back to that.
Understand.
It would lead them back to that primitive level of understanding. Like,
Yes.
before science, before, like...
And I'm saying that even if they had science, the whole religion thing is basically comes down to, like, I see it as an emotional thing.
Yeah, it's largely emotional for a lot of people. It's not rational.
Yeah, it's not. And when you're a kid growing up, the thing that is, like, if you're lucky enough, you have an adult that helps you understand and be able to control your emotions, or not control them, to just know when certain emotions are arising in you, because your emotional state dictates how you interpret the information that's coming through your eyes.
Right.
Because if you're scared and you're running, and then you stop for a moment, and then it's late at night, moonlight is out, and you see these, you don't exactly know what you're running from, and then all of a sudden you see these shadowy things kind of crawling on the ground, and you think it's coming towards you, you're going to take off running, where it's actually the moonlight and the tree swaying, and it's the shadow of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
But you contribute that to some kind of creature.
Right.
So, like...
But you're better off being right about that than being wrong about that.
Yeah, you're better off,
right.
like...
As a survival instinct.
Yeah.
Right.
But what should happen is, like, you leave and then you get a group and go back and investigate. But there is no follow-up.
Right.
Like, it's only after years and years and, like, centuries is that more of us start doing follow-ups.
Yeah. Well, kind of to this point, like, I would say human beings are not driven... I don't know what the percentage would be, but it's definitely not 100% or anywhere near 100% in terms of being logical creatures. Like, we don't operate on, like, kind of what you described in that scenario. Like, oh, I was just terrified of that thing. Let me bring some people back and go and investigate it and calmly and rationally figure out what it was. Like, maybe some very rare people will be like that in some rare occasions, but I think by and large most people will be like, what the fuck was that? I'm not going back anywhere near in that jungle or whatever.
Exactly.
And they'll live for the rest of their life in terror of going back to that encounter, that experience or whatever. So,
but I think part of that is taught as well.
Yeah, it's taught, but I think it's innate in us, and not just us though. I think every living organism, it's a survival instinct.
I don't think every living organism
well,
is like that.
Like animals.
I think it's taught.
Well, no, I mean, like an animal, a wild animal, if they go and they, touch an electric fence or whatever, it's like once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, but you'll still get the other few that lurk around the fence and wait until it's not electrified anymore.
Sure, but what does it have to do with being a learned or taught thing?
Well, like, so if you do that for generations and you eliminate the ones that are still hanging around that fence, they'll just know not to go touch that fence. They won't know why.
Right. Yeah. There was actually an experiment I saw on this with monkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
There was. But yeah, that's what I think. Like the whole, like passed down from generation to generation.
Okay, so that's what you mean by the taught thing. It's kind of more inherited. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I feel like it's different than just being taught it. Like, for example, with the scenario I gave with the kids after nuclear fallout, they still will have inherited all of the previous generations' fears, and those things will still play out, right? Even though they weren't explicitly taught by parents or society these things, right?
They will have some things still inside them, and that gets into a thought process I've been having now is consciousness a byproduct of something else?
Is consciousness a byproduct of something else? How do you mean?
Meaning that, like, our consciousness is not real. Our consciousness is a survival mechanism, and what we think as our individual doesn't really matter. It doesn't really exist. It's just something to help a containment move on.
Are you saying we're all batteries in the Matrix?
No, not necessarily a battery in the Matrix, but like, I came to this idea when I was reading up more about crowd mentality years ago.
Okay.
Like, you could feasibly say that, like, certain people that you think would think of as rational individuals, when you get them together into a crowd, they do pretty dumb things according to the crowd, what the crowd is doing. And when Viv and I went to a protest in Washington, D.C., and we were walking around, and it's like some of those people I knew, I've met through her, and I went there to protest about something specific. And then the things were changing, and they were still protesting, and Viv was still protesting, and I turned to her and I was like, this is not what I came here for.
Wait, can you be more specific about things changing?
I'm trying to remember exactly what the protests, because it was protesting Trump.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah, but
immigration policy.
Yeah, I went there for, it was an immigration policy. Majority of his policies at the beginning, I would say pretty damn close to 100% I hated. And I thought was blatantly just anything that had Obama on it, get rid of it. And I went there to protest about that. And since she works for a union, union helps the employees get their spouses, if they want to come. So, I was like, I'll go. And we went, and we were protesting a specific thing. And then the chant kind of melded with other people that were chanting, so it became this one other chant. And the more people, the more that the chanting morphed into something else. And I was like, that's not what I came here for.
I'm not down with this peripheral chant.
So it was like, it got into something else, and they were still chanting, and Viv was still chanting a little bit too, but like, I said, this isn't why I came here. At the beginning, we were doing something else. Now, the words that's coming out is nothing like what it was at the beginning. Okay. Now it's something else.
Right.
And then they started yelling, they started yelling shame. And I was like
Game of Thrones?
Why are they quoting Game of Thrones?
I probably would have busted out laughing, just like, what are we doing here? What's going on?
Yeah, so I turned to Viv, I was like, okay, when we get to that area, we're leaving. I'm done with this. And there was counter protesters, but there were one was about pro-life, and I tried getting into a discussion with one of the guys there, and I just realized that person was not of sound mind to do any kind of discussion. So we just went to the museum and then went to eat.
Okay.
But my point is that
how things can evolve and devolve in a mass mentality, crowd mentality.
So that mass mentality is that a consciousness.
Right, this group collective consciousness.
Yeah. So, when you think about, our bodies itself...
I would say it has a pull. I would say it has a pull, but you, for one, you're an example you just gave. You chose not to partake in that. So
Yes, but if that's a consistent thing going day after day after day, and that is being reinforced, then you just become part of that mass consciousness.
most people do, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at Facebook, look at social media.
Exactly.
I was just talking with somebody earlier today how I don't really check Facebook anymore. And I know you're off Facebook, and that's probably a good move. But the only thing I've posted in the last, I mean, I posted one post that I moved to Philadelphia. That was it. But other than that, I've been posting pictures of cute dogs running around. And, that's about it. Because I enjoy, animals and cute stuff. So, but that's basically about it with my involvement with Facebook and social media. Because I go on there and I look at what people are posting, and these are friends of mine, and I'm like, it's like everybody is an activist now. And not that there's anything wrong with being an activist, but it's kind of like it's more of that crowd mentality you're talking about, where people are just sharing links without even reading the articles. And
if you ask them questions about what they're being an activist about, you realize that it's pretty hollow. They don't have any thought on it.
Right.
And that's part of my problem with a lot of people. And I saw this happening in a smaller scale before social media.
Yeah.
And social media just exacerbated the problem.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. So I'm kind of in a weird situation because I'm like, as an independent content creator, I need to, I'm building a brand, I'm building brands, I need to be involved with social media. I need to be publishing content, and I enjoy creating content and publishing it. But for me, the draw of social media all along since the very beginning has been connecting with people. It's just a means of connecting with people. Facebook is a means of connecting with friends and family located elsewhere. And then other platforms like YouTube or Pinterest or Twitter or whatever, just being as an artist, as an independent creator, to publish works and have them be received by an audience and to engage with people that way, and ideally to monetize and make a living somehow doing that, so I don't just have to do client work forever. That was kind of the dream or the aspiration, and I feel like it kind of started out that way, but it's really devolved largely into a pay-to-play kind of thing in terms of publishing and marketing your content, but also the toxicity that we're talking about, where you really just have to post an angry tweet about Trump and then people will love that and retweet it and like it. Or you can take the other side of the fence and be like very pro-Trump or whatever, and those people will get on board, But I'll post a thoughtful tweet, right? That's not taking either side, and maybe just, and at least with Twitter, I feel like it's completely pointless because I feel like I'm just tweeting into a vacuum where nobody hears or cares anything that I have to say about anything. And it didn't used to be that way. I used to have all these random thoughts and funny one-liners and all these kind of jokes and things, and I would tweet them and I would get a response, like people liking the tweet, retweeting and following and all that kind of stuff. And it was fun. It was cool. And I would meet new people that way, and it was great. But not anymore, So I don't know what to do about it, though, because there's a big part of me that just doesn't want to be involved with social media at all anymore. But on the other hand, I'm like trying to be a creator in the world now. It's like with both hands tied behind your back. That's what it feels like.
Well, it's like what I said to you like a while ago. It's like, yeah, social media is what it is, but be aware of what it is. Like, if you're aware of it, then you're fine.
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, I am aware of what it is. I try not to hinge my happiness and personal satisfaction on social media, which even that is an exercise. It's a mental, you have to make a focused effort to not attach your self-worth or your success, metrics to how many followers you have, how many likes you have. So I'm aware of that, and hopefully I'm getting a little better about that. But it's still frustrating, you know. Like right now, it feels good when I post a certain piece of content and a few hundred people are liking it and people are sharing it. That feels great. And then on my other account, my other brand, for my personal brand, I'll do a drawing, and it's kind of like, all right, 20 people like it, and that's the end of the story. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah, but you gotta remember that I treat social media as gambling at a casino. I have one of those slot machines.
you just kind of throw a coin in there or throw content out there and just see. Sometimes it'll take off, and other times nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't go to the slot machine a lot, so.
Right.
That's it.
Going back to kind of what sprung this conversation in the first place, when I was talking about how we were talking about social media and being an independent creator and all that, versus having a day job basically to pay your bills. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of saying, if I can help it, I would rather not go back to working in an office again.
Yeah.
Because I just like having more freedom and control, like the work-life balance. I'm kind of, in an ideal world, I totally agree with you. I want my life to just be my life, and the work can just kind of be a part of that. And I feel like that's better accomplished when I'm not stuck in an office for 9 or 10 hours a day and I can't really do anything else while I'm there.
Yeah.
So working from home is a good step in the right direction, which is why I try to work from home as much as possible. But even beyond that, I think about residual income, I think about royalties and things like that, where I would like my life to move more in a direction of I'm doing what I love to do all the time, every day, even if it is 7 days a week. I don't mind because I love creating. I love sharing what I create, right? So as long as I can make enough money to make a living doing that, I don't mind doing that 7 days a week because like you were saying earlier, like to me, it doesn't feel like work because I'm doing what I love. So, but the problem is, I mean, the struggle is real, making that a reality when I have to play the social media game and pay for marketing and do whatever, which I haven't done a whole lot of that, you know, and maybe that's my downfall is I have to just suck it up and do all this shit that I don't really want to do. Let's touch on, I may or may not include this, but I am curious to hear your thoughts about Confusianity. You know, like we talked the other day about you were like stoked about it, and I said I'm kind of feeling out sort of the brand values and what I want to do with it and whatnot. Do you have any thoughts on Confusianity and sort of what it could be or what you would like to see it as or anything really?
Well, like, the thing I liked about the idea was it's just to kind of like open up and have kind of like an unfiltered way of, say, with a specific question, you just say, well, like, the parameters of this question, this is what it's asking you, to make it a little bit clearer for people. Trying to figure out how to explain that. It just goes back to, like, the way that I framed the free will question. The way it's presented is pretty loaded, and for you to just answer it in two ways. Don't look at questions as a multiple choice. Look at it as an essay.
Right. I do think that's important in general because I feel like the educational system, I mean, you grew up in Jamaica, but I feel like the educational system in America, I don't know how similar it would be, but I feel like I feel like it's even worse now, you know, with kids these days because I feel like the schools, they don't actually teach critical thinking. And I feel like
absolutely not.
And I feel like that's even happening at a collegiate level now, where it's more of the mass think and like the left-wing activism and, you know, everybody's just spouting talking points and they don't even know what they're, you know what I mean? They think they know what they're picketing and protesting, but if you stop and question them very deeply, they're like, yeah, because Trump sucks, and da 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 da, and you know what I mean. So I feel like for Confusianity, starting with a focus in religion and Christianity, but it can be applied across the board. I'm just trying to encourage critical thinking, really, and also just thinking for yourself, you know, and people coming to their own conclusions about life and their belief system, and you know what I mean? Because it's like breaking out of that mold of kind of what I suffered through, in the sense of I was born into Christianity and I accepted it and embraced it, and it wasn't really working for me. And ultimately, I pulled myself away from it. It took a couple of years, and it took a lot of my 30s to kind of deprogram myself. But I guess I'm looking at it as wanting to help people in that process of thinking for themselves and feeling okay about that without guilt, without shame, without hesitation, because those are the kind of things that have plagued me my whole life. Like I feel like I've always been a very skeptical, doubting, critical thinking individual, but at the same time, I was never in environments that really encouraged that. So there was always that internal struggle within myself, right? Of, like this isn't gelling with me, but I feel like I just have to accept this because that's my identity and this is my community, And I guess with Confusianity, I really want to encourage people that you can think for yourself. You can come to your own conclusions. But part of the problem with that, though, too, is that, so, okay, let me shift gears on that a little bit, because there's a lot of what I've seen in kind of the atheist versus religious, media space, is that you have a lot of sciencey atheist people, who are very quick to label religious Christian people as just idiots, And
that's a problem.
Right, it's a problem, not just for the sake of, well, you're never going to convince anybody with that kind of attitude, but also, I don't think you can completely remove personal experience from the equation. You know what I mean? But that's what they're kind of trying to do. They're trying to say, okay, you believe in Jesus, or you believe in that, or you believe in ghosts or whatever. And they're like, what are you basing that on? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's a feeling, or God spoke to me, or whatever. And the atheist sciencey movement is kind of like, well, you're an idiot because you can't prove that. Whereas really, I do believe in personal experience and the power of personal experience. For me, everything happens in your mind, right? So fine, there is an objective reality, and we all have our subjective glimpses at it, right? So like the sky is blue, we might say, but somebody kind of sees it as greenish or whatever. Even though most people might say it's blue or whatever, but like they're entitled to their subjective view.
There's a village that sees the sky as white.
Right. Which is, again, more of the point of everything is highly subjective, but at the same time, we can't have chaos in a society if we can't agree on 2 + 2 = 4, and certain basic medical procedures and traffic lights. When it's green, don't go, or when it's green, go. When it's stop red, we have to agree on some objective parameters, right?
Well, the thing that when someone asked me if I believe in God, I was like, what's the parameters of that question? So does it mean that do I believe in God, a God, or your God? Or am I calling something God?
Right.
Like, what is the parameters of that? Like, that's my argument.
Right.
Whenever someone asks me that. Because I put it, like I framed earlier, that, if you're talking about a being that's able, like, that being could very well have created us. But that being is not all these things that you are attributing to that being, where it's benevolent. That being could be very malicious. And with us being here is a byproduct of what that thing was doing.
Right. If you look at the Old Testament alone, that God is very malicious.
Yeah. So, like, my issue with religion is the things that they're attributing to religion, because I don't see that necessarily as religion. The same thing where, like, the definition of a human being, I don't consider those things human traits. And that's where me being an atheist is kind of like, I'm kind of like in a weird area where, yeah, sure, there could be like this higher being, but it's a higher being. It's not, to us, it might appear like godlike, but it's just a being.
Okay.
So, like, that thing can exist, but it's not necessarily a god. You're attributing all these parameters to it.
Right.
And,
well, yeah, if you look through all the ancient myths and literature, we tend to personify gods. You know,
yeah,
whether it was the Greeks or the Romans or, you know, even Judaism and Christianity. Right. So there could be, what you're saying is there could be a higher power, a God, but we're wrong to kind of put all these labels on it and define it in these very concrete ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not really technically atheist in a way. You're kind of more agnostic.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the being could be a giant turtle. I don't know. And we're like, oh, it's a god. We're living on its back. It's providing us food. It created us. Well, no, it didn't really create us. We just kind of grew up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, with Confusianity, it's more that, like, one of the things in martial arts I also use with just regular things is I don't hold on to something so tightly that I'm dragged away with it.
Yeah.
I need to be able to let it go and be able to pick it back up, and
Or let it go,
or let it go,
or let it go entirely, right? If you need to, just like, yeah.
So it's basically presenting things in that point, that light. So you understand when a question is coming to you in a certain way, and you're able to look back and see, okay, there's 500 years of why now that question is formulated that way. So that question, when it comes to you, just kind of think about it a little bit and think about, okay, like, what's the framing of that question? Why that question is framed that way? And what's my answer, my initial answer? And then research a little bit and see if my initial answer is still going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that I saw the possibility for Confusianity.
Almost like kind of dissecting the questions that are being asked themselves.
Yes,
and then,
because everyone takes these questions as, oh, you mean this direct answer? Because we're taught to do that.
Right.
We're not really taught to say, like, I got lucky because I had certain people ask me questions that led me to answer deeper and deeper.
In your childhood?
Yeah, like, my mom usually, like, she usually asks me questions, and it's like I have to think deeper and deeper. And, yeah, she was the more religious one out of, like, everyone in the family. And we've had religious talks while growing up, and I had to answer in certain ways. And it's also with my my choice of going to school, because my dad didn't want me to go to college because he thought it was useless. And my mom, she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I didn't have an answer of what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do from a kid, but it's more that I don't feel that applies. I feel that I need to understand how to learn and figure out what I want to do. And in a way, I'm still kind of figuring out what I want to do, because, like, and I'm still trying to understand how to learn better.
Right. I think that's a good journey for you to be on and for all of us to be on.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder how many people are actually on that journey, though.
You don't know. You never know.
I know,
Like,
but
some people,
I'm just curious, like, in general, don't you think most people, they are kind of like, all right, this, and this. That's who I am. That's what I believe. That's just going to be the way it is for the next 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years till
yeah,
I die.
and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's probably the majority of people.
Yeah, it is the majority, and
Yeah.
that's why I say it's unfortunate, and that's why I was constantly. I think that's where, like, for me, like my mid-20s, it was just like I was always down because I didn't have a lot of critical thinkers around me. I basically had a couple of my friends that were like that, and the rest of my friends don't. And if I wasn't hanging out with the friends that I was able to talk and have those conversations with, I don't know, I'd probably end up in a mental institution.
It's that extreme for you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you wouldn't be able to thrive just on your own with those thoughts, like left to yourself to kind of process them and wrestle with them on your own?
No, because it's kind of like I was speeding through those thoughts so much and switching from different things to different things, and also trying to figure out with, like, what I wanted to do for work. And this was before I ended up being a print production manager. Like, I just didn't know what, because every single thing that I also attempted, I realized that I was able to get pretty decent at it really quickly compared to someone that was doing it for a while. And then I realized it was because the way that I was spending time to learn in the beginning and formulate, and then it was more observing. And that's why I almost became a cop. Like, I almost went to the academy because I thought, okay, maybe I'd be good as a cop. And then I realized, no, like, there's still assholes at cops anyway. So, like, I mean, there's assholes in every field. And it was just I didn't like carrying around a gun all the time. Like, that was something I didn't want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, what else? So, like, I think now, like, I think my career path should have been some kind of a scientist or some type of a librarian where you're housing science equipment or something like that.
Yeah, I could totally see that for you. Being a librarian or like a scientist of some sort. It requires a lot of patience, but I feel like you have the patience. Certainly more patience than I do. I'm so much more of like a hedonist that desires immediate satisfaction.
Yeah, but back to the point of Confusianity. That's basically what I think it is. It's just like if I have to distill it down, it's when you're being asked a question, don't answer it like a multiple choice. Answer it more like an essay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Like, yeah, even like how I want to phrase questions with people. It's like not just like, do you believe in God or not?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be like, well, like, what do you believe? That's more of the question, you know? I'm like, well, why do you believe that? And like, you know, what led you to believe that? What do you like about it? What don't you like about your belief system? What's working for you? What's not? Have you ever thought about this or that? Like, you know, like I guess in a way, the way I interact with other people about this, like I have a curiosity about what people believe and why they do. But also there's this element of I feel like I'm always preaching to myself, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So by me sort of challenging other people to question their beliefs deeper or whatever the case, like by me doing that, it helps me also remind myself to question what I believe more deeply, you know?
Yeah, because like whenever I go into that question or go into those conversations, I realize that most of the time my beliefs are kind of loose. Like I said, I'm not gripping at my beliefs.
Right.
But the other person is, and I'm curious on why do they grip to that if they haven't thought about it?
Right. That's the kind of the ironic thing. Is people like you and I, we think way more deeply about what we think and believe, and at the same time, we're so loose with it that we could shift and change, right? Whereas most other people, it's the polar opposite on both fronts. They don't think that much about what they believe, and they super hang on to it like life and death.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. You'd think it would be the other way around. Yeah, it's dangerous for sure, but it's weird because I don't know, 90% of people out there are more like the other way, and maybe 10% or less are like how we go about things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, it's really weird. Like, I might actually want to do some episodes with certain people I'll interview that are going to be highly political. Like, I might even have a whole podcast episode that's just talking politics, because not so much in the past week. In the past week, I've been doing a lot of research about the early church and the Bible and how it came to be, and Jesus and all that. But a couple weeks ago, I was watching a lot of political videos on YouTube, like just Steven Crowder. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's kind of more of a libertarian, right-wing kind of guy. And I like some of the things he says and some of the points he makes, but, he's also super Christian, religious, and I'm like, okay, well, you kind of lost me there. But it's weird because as I watched more and more of those videos, I thought they were making a lot of good points, and I found myself, I don't want to say regressing, but I felt pulled a little bit more back to my old Republican, conservative days, and yet they lose me on the super religious stuff. So somehow I feel like I'm actually kind of laissez-faire government, like limited government, less taxes, more personal freedom, very libertarian agenda. But then they throw in this whole Jesus Christianity thing, which in the past week alone, I've seen so much evidence for Christianity basically just being made up, where I'm like, all right, you guys lost me there. So what we were just talking about a couple minutes ago about how we think so deeply about things, but we're so not attached to wherever we're at in a belief. Like, I'm highly malleable, I realize. I'm constantly oscillating between left and right. And I don't like to throw around the terms good and bad anymore. So, you know what I mean? Like, I can't really describe what I'm talking about with myself being liquid, here and there, like it's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you're shifting between good points, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, like I think with my views in politics, I think people would be very probably nervous the way that I think, and be like, well, that's pretty out there.
You make people uncomfortable with how you think about things, right?
Well, it's more that because I don't consider myself an American. I don't, even though that I went and did the citizenship thing, it's more like, when it comes to politics, I have certain views that I'm not in Republicans. I'm not a Democrat. Like, I always tell people I look at the policies.
Yeah.
There's certain policies on both sides that I like, and the policies tend to be more Democratic. But, yeah, I still stick with just policies because at any moment the parties could flip again where the policies I agree on more on the Republican side. My problem is in general, it doesn't really matter to them what policies one of their constituents is pushing. It's more sticking with the group.
Yeah, it's like, what's the party platform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel that's a dangerous thing because, like I said, the party had flipped before. And if people looked at back why it flipped and when it flipped, it's not a good thing for minorities. Because, yes, it was the Republicans that put that law into place, proclamation thing, under Lincoln, but that wasn't really enforced. There was still slavery happening. And it was like if you were an educated black person, you were kidnapped. And it's not that slavery was only in the South. It was in the North as well. Like, about 80 years after that was put into law, there was still slavery in Pennsylvania. And
after the Emancipation Proclamation, there was slavery in Pennsylvania 80 years later?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. I've never heard that.
Yeah. So, like, I look at policies. I don't really look at party as the thing.
And also rhetoric, because that's just a bunch of bullshit that people spew.
Mhm. So and the term liberal, I'm confused of how that's being used as well, because that term, both Republicans and Democrats are liberal, because the alternative to that was monarchy. So when it comes to like saying, you're liberal, well, aren't you liberal as well? Because
compared to a monarchy, but that's not really up for debate.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to just using words without understanding the definition of them.
Well, I do agree that it's tough to nail down the liberal definition these days, but I think you could come up with a bullet list of items that describe kind of conservative versus liberal. And you've probably heard there's like fiscally versus socially, right? So somebody could be fiscally conservative but socially liberal. That happens.
Like the things that it's more I guess like the hard policies where they split at. That I also have an issue with, and I have an issue with how they go about like contesting as well, because no one really thinks deeper on the issue.
Of course not.
It's just like well, if this is it shouldn't exist.
Yeah, it's just partisan politics as usual all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is as confusing as it can be for people and for myself, this is a weird thing for me to say, but this is honestly where I'm at these days. I feel personally less torn between Republican and Democrat, and I feel more the pull between, or for me, the struggle to decide where I fit more between libertarian and socialist. So, you know what I'm saying? Like that's, like, for example, let's say Green Party versus libertarian, right? Like, if Tulsi Gabbard is the Democratic candidate, I'll probably vote for her in the next election. But they're already gunning for her so much, it shows you that the establishment doesn't want her to rise and be the president. Which to me shows that, she must be even better than I thought she would if the establishment wants to take her down. So, but if it ends up being Kamala Harris and like basically another Hillary Clinton versus Trump situation, then I'm kind of torn between Green Party and Libertarian, because, I do think it's wrong with healthcare to turn it into a profit industry. Like I feel like ethically that's wrong. How are we putting a price tag on people's well-being?
Well,
in a civilized, country like America where there's a lot of wealth, it just seems like.
My point with that was that we're heading. People keep pushing to go more towards capitalism, like, because that's the model of this country. Like, it's a capitalist that was one of the tests too for being a citizen. I forget how they framed it.
What is the economic system that's used in America? Something like that?
Yeah, something like that. And like I've always felt that it's got to be a blend of like all of them put together. Because if it's full up straight capitalism, it's basically this is what it is.
Yeah, it's basically
it's
like
going to get worse.
Yeah, it's Darwinism. You know, the strong get stronger, rich oppress the poor gets poorer, and like that's just exactly.
And it becomes easier and easier to make these quick fix because I'm not pro raising the minimum wage to 15.
Yeah, see, again, that's like a talking point for the liberal left democratic platform, and I'm like, okay, Aaron and I have talked about this before. Well, I don't really deal with recruiters that much, but he'll get an email from a recruiter and they're like, hey, we want to hire you for this animation gig, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, we can pay you $25 an hour. And it's like, okay, and you want to raise the minimum wage for working at McDonald's to $15 an hour? You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like, where are we going with this? Where somebody has really qualified in a highly technical skill and they're being paid $25 an hour. And then somebody just shows up at McDonald's and they're making $15 an hour. You know, what are we really solving by raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour?
Yeah, and that was I was telling Viv my point on that because she was confused of why because I heard about it and then I was like, it seems like a okay idea, and I was like, I gotta think about that more.
Right.
And after I thought about it, I was like, yeah, it's just a quick fix. It's not going to do anything. It's only going to do something for the next maybe 5 years, like 5 or 10 years.
Well, yeah, when you factor in inflation and money becoming less valuable and people making more money, whatever, but it's like...
No. I'm not even factoring that. I was factoring in, okay, so you're raising the minimum wage, basically low-skilled jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Are those low-skilled jobs going to still be there?
Now, are you talking about like robots and AI and taking over a lot of those tasks?
It doesn't even have to get to that because, like, with low-skilled jobs, you're giving them a higher pay so they could they use the term a livable wage,
mm-hmm.
which yes, I understand that, but why is their wage not livable anymore? Because the relegations that should be in place in other areas aren't. That's part of the issue. It's easier to raise the minimum wage and do other things versus do the other stuff that needs to be done.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying is it would be okay for them to still earn $7 an hour as long as you fix other things in society where they were actually able to have health care and, take care of their kids and raise a family and, have a normal life, even though you're only making $7.50 an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like there's other things that need to be fixed. That's not going to be fixed with $15 an hour. It's gonna basically it's plugging a hole in a dam. For now.
And I feel like that's the problem with the liberal left Democrat agenda is I feel like they do that kind of thing where they're just like $15 an hour, a livable wage, and then everybody's like, yeah. And it's like it sounds nice, but you're like you're saying, like you're not really solving the problems.
Yeah, and well, I have that on the Republican side too, because I like those other things that need to be in place are the things that are going to halt capitalism a little bit, and it's going to be less money going into the big corporations' hands.
Right. Did you see the articles? You probably didn't, but I saw this on Facebook when I logged on. People were posting about the new tax laws, GOP, and Netflix not paying any taxes, and Amazon and all this shit. And, they got billions of dollars in profit, and they're not paying any taxes. And going back to the toxicity of Facebook, I read one of these articles there on Netflix not paying any taxes. And, you could tell the tone of who posted it was like, Trump and the GOP is so bad with these tax laws, giving all these breaks. I actually went in and I read the article, and it showed that even back during the Obama administration, they were still paying $0 in taxes.
Yeah.
So I made the comment on Facebook. I was like, oh, just so you know, the article said they've been not paying taxes for years now. So this isn't something new with the GOP and Trump.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things where I'm like, somebody's posting something angrily and portraying it in such a way as like demonizing Trump. And this, what I commented is not a defense of Trump and the GOP by any means, but I'm just saying, let's look at the facts. You know, this has been going on for a long time in corporate greed and loopholes. These are all the problems that need to get fixed. You know, you can't just allow companies to make billions of dollars in profit and not pay any taxes and then say, oh, $15 minimum wage for the poorest people. And then like, we're done. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's for I forget her name, Ortez or
COA, AOC. That lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for all her faults, there was this one thing that I was like, finally, a politician is asking those questions.
Okay, what was she asking?
Because there's no law against a politician accepting money from these corporations.
Right.
And changing laws to basically help them.
Right.
And that has been my issue for a very long time.
Yeah, campaign finance reform. It's one of those...
It's not even campaign financing.
Yeah.
It's just financing.
Right. It's just blatant corruption.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's just funny, though, because when you bring that up to regular Americans, people don't vote on that shit.
Exactly.
But the thing is, it's not like they even have a viable option, though.
No,
because if they vote Democrat or Republican, they're still the same, because all those candidates are funded by the same companies.
And that's why you vote on policy.
I know, but when you go and you pull the lever, you're not voting on policy. You're voting on people who are politicians who are already bought and sold.
Yes, but policies keep coming up throughout. And, you know, those town meetings, they're supposed to happen more continuously. They're not.
What do you mean supposed to?
Everyone that you elect into office, they're supposed to have these town meetings that happen. There's supposed to be scheduled town meetings that's supposed to happen more frequently than they do. Is
that constitutional or something?
It was something written in the laws. That's why they're there.
Mm.
And on top of that, the amount of people that we have in office versus the population, there's a disparity there. Based on the population, there should be more. So the people that we have in government aren't enough there for the population, the current population in the United States.
So you're saying we need more people in politics?
We do need more people in government.
It is kind of interesting to think about the future of politics in America. Like, we're already seeing this rise of celebrity.
Yeah.
You know, when people talk about Oprah and The Rock and all this shit, or Kanye or whatever, it's like, there's that, but then...
It's been like that since Reagan. And since Kennedy.
Which really is just kind of the dawn of TV, really, and like public image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the catalyst for everything that we have.
Right. But what I was about to say is I wonder if there will be a trend toward regular people running for office and getting into politics. On the one hand, I could see that trend happening because more people are becoming activists.
There's going to be macho Camacho.
No, that's the celebrity thing already. That's already happening.
Yeah.
That we've passed that with Trump as president. But what I was saying is I was kind of wondering if more regular people are going to get involved in politics. But I could see that happening. But on the other hand, it won't happen because regular people don't have the money.
It's not only the money. It's more that, well, yeah, it is the money.
Yeah, you're right. It is the money. But yeah, also people will get skewered in terms of
Yeah.
knowing lingo and policy and not having backgrounds in it. And
It's just knowing policy. Because if someone actually goes through and learn policies, I think they'll be able to destroy any politician.
Yeah. Well, politicians have a way of wiggling out of the tough questions.
No, well, that comes with how you formulate your question as well.
Yeah. Well, then the problem moves on to our press and how bought out the press already is. So that's why the tough questions are never really asked.
Yeah.
And what I hate is when they actually dare to ask a tough question,
and they move on.
And the politician, the politician gives a bullshit answer, and then they just move on. And
yeah,
I'm like,
that irritates me.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you were so close to actually being a decent journalist, or
Yeah.
You were halfway there.
I give you a half clap. Because I forget the name of the class that it was taking, but a book I still have to read, that was from her class, is What You Think About Politics, What You Think You Know About Politics But Don't.
Okay.
I would recommend everybody read that book.
Did you already read it?
No, she already read it, and she said some of my views were in that book.
Wait, Viv read it?
Yeah, because she read it for class.
Okay. So what? Basically, does the book sum up a lot of common political views that American citizens have that are erroneous and built on false premises?
Yeah.
And it kind of
and how the government should be working and why it's not working that way.
That does sound like a good read. But then the problem is, though, going back to work-life balance and whatnot, is that I know I have this problem, and a lot of Americans do as well, which is I don't really read that many books anymore because I don't have time to just sit down and read a book, I feel like I can take in a lot more information quickly by watching a video. I guess I could do the audiobook of the book you mentioned. I could do that.
But one of the things, I would say it still take the time to read, and it sounds weird me saying that because I don't care to read that much.
I'm such a slow reader. That's the hang up for me. I like to read, and I used to read a lot more in the past, but now it's I feel like I'm running less and less on time and more things to do, and I'm I don't have time to read an entire book.
My problem is that after every chapter, or if 3 or 4 paragraphs, I stop and kind of analytically go over it, because I don't really read things to do with stories anymore. The last things I read was...
You talking about you don't read fiction anymore, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right now, the thing that I'm reading is it's this book on economics that was from the Industrial Era. So, after I read, 4 paragraphs or so, I actually stop and ingest it and try to formulate it. And if I miss a point, I go back and read that part, and then, a lot of what this guy is saying, I don't agree with. So I also formulate my own argument. So that also makes it longer for me.
Yeah.
It takes me longer to read stuff that way.
True.
But I still go through with it.
Right. Yeah, I remember all the Christian books. I should pull them out. That would be interesting for Confusianity. So I have all these Christian author books that I read before. And I remember even when I was a Christian, I would be reading them and I would put all these notes in the margins about shit I completely disagree with, or I'm asking a question how can you just say that? Or just all this kind of stuff. I'm what is that based on? And what about this? And I'm yelling at the book I'm reading. But it would be interesting, maybe to scan some of those notes and post them on Confusianity or whatever. Cause I was so, it's funny when I think about the person I am today, cause I'm all the signs were there all along for me to be this person. You know what I mean? There was always this struggle, or even being a designer. Like just the way I kind of go about things and my thinking and creative thoughts is like, it was there as a kid. But the same thing in terms of religion and politics and all of these things is that I was always uneasy about things that don't seem true, you know?
Yeah.
And I would question them. It just, just what things wouldn't sit well with me. And I felt compelled to say something about it or question it. And when you talked about being in the wrong circles, and how that would be the end of you before, I feel like in large part, I was in the wrong circles for a really long time. And I really like the transition that I went through in my 30s because it ended up leading me to hang out with a lot more people who are more entrepreneurial, people who are just positive thinkers, people who are very active and go-getters and hungry, both for personal success, but also just, to make the world a better place, to do something with their lives, to leave a legacy. A lot of people in New York like that who I met in my mid to late 30s, way more than I was meeting in church in my 20s. So, yeah, when I think about who I am today now, it's almost like obvious that I arrived here, but like, God damn, it took so long to get here. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I have this true self all along, but I was allowing all of these, I was living in this environment that was not incubating it correctly. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was, I didn't know how to articulate my thoughts. Like, there's still some that I still don't know how to articulate. I've just gotten better at doing that. So other people will understand me a little bit better. But, yeah, like, I feel like I've always enjoyed talking with people that were like older and have gone through a lot, where they've been in religion and out of religion. They study history as well. I always like sitting and talking with people like that, mainly because they're usually aware when they're presenting something with a filter. So they try to present it to me where they say, okay, here are my biases, but this is what we think happened, and this is how I generally think they happened. So I'm always lucky that I've had that enter in and out of my life where I had people like that. So it's always, that's how I also try to present certain points and try to open up certain people's awareness. Because I was talking with somebody last week where they were like, they were talking about legacies and everything, and I was like, well, like, I don't really care about that because, like, what do you mean by a legacy? Do you mean like Christ, that type of legacy? Because anything we do now is kind of gone after about 200 years.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the time frame on a legacy? Like, my thought process has been, like I said, about, like, the consciousness thing. And,
wait, how exactly? Can you expound on that?
the consciousness thing?
Yeah.
It's more that, like, is our individual consciousness a byproduct of something? Like, it's something that's formulating our consciousness, and it needs to formulate that consciousness to survive. So, survival is the most optimal thing. So, in order to do that, there needs to be a consciousness. And that's why our consciousness is there.
You mean as an individual? Like we've evolved to have this individual consciousness as a means of survival as an individual?
Yeah. So it's like where it's like the bacteria and everything that live inside of us.
Wait, was it you? Was it you who I was talking to back on New Year's Eve? Was it where we had this conversation about how we're all a bunch of micro?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I wanted to talk about that. I've been thinking about that on and off here and there, where I'm like, that's a crazy idea, a crazy thought, which seems entirely plausible. It's just kind of gross, or like,
Yeah.
like we're all a bunch of little microbes and germs just particled, like grouped together into this person that I am. But really, it's just like a billion little particles and organisms and bacteria. Just
Yes, exactly. And it's like once you understand that, you say, well, yeah, it makes the consciousness thing kind of plausible.
because then you start thinking in terms of like a hive mind, right?
Exactly.
Like my individual mind is just a hive mind of all these individual microbes and whatever.
Yeah, working together to
Right.
survive.
Yeah. It's a crazy idea, but when I think about it, I'm like, it's not a very pleasant idea. But,
No, it's not. And if you tell that to people, most people can't handle it.
right.
They can't handle the thought of that being it because, once again, they're holding on to that individual self so much.
Right.
Where,
And the idea of a soul and, living on, and there's nothing poetic about what we're talking about right now in terms of that whole microbial.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I've heard people talk, like non-Christian, just basically spiritual people talk in general about, in very poetic terms, like, oh, I think when we die, our essence lives on, and oh, like in the things and the legacy and that we leave behind, and the hearts we've touched, and like the memory of lost loved ones, and like people just go on, or like life is like a dream, and we die, and our consciousness die, but like the dream lives on, and blah blah blah. Like people just say all these things, and I'm like,
yeah.
I kind of have, in the past, I try to be a little more respectful now, but in the past, I've kind of rolled my eyes at that kind of thing. But what we're talking about we're all just a bunch of microbial conglomerations walking around, like, that totally flies in the face of all that poetic, jazz.
It does.
It's totally unromantic. It's totally unpoetic.
Yeah, and like.
But that could be the reality. That could actually be the reality.
Exactly, and like and it was like when I came to that, it was like, well, then because it was another thing that I saw where it was an atheist and a Christian talking, and he would say, well, then there's no meaning to life. Like you're saying that like life has no meaning, and I was like, that's it. Like the meaning of life is life has no meaning.
Right.
It's just what you're putting into life. That's the meaning.
Right.
And if it's like that way, then yes, it makes all of this plausible, and it makes that all like the thing that we like. This consciousness is creating religion, and it's not specific to a religion because it's just creating all these religions to help us keep going on.
Right. Yeah, man. So now we're into the deep shit here. So like, yeah. So I think
that's where my thoughts have been like for the past year now.
Yeah, I think
because like when you like for most people when they find out like there is if you tell someone there's no meaning to life on a mass scale, that becomes a mass problem. So how do you govern that?
Okay,
like,
well, let me
that.
let me piggyback off of that and bring it on onto the issue that Brian and I were debating yesterday, which we were talking about. We were talking about morality, and he was saying morality comes from God, and apart from God, there's no true morality. I don't want to misquote him because I kind of said what he said, and then he said, no, that's not what I'm saying, and I was like, I copied and pasted what he wrote, and I was like, dude, that's what you just said. But I've heard it from him and from other Christians who say that this idea that there's no morality apart from God, if you take God or religion out of the equation, that just like a bunch of people. I'm like, what? So kind of what they're getting at is, what are you saying? How can you say that though? Because there are atheists and agnostic people, non-spiritual people running around every day, not murdering people, not raping and pillaging. So clearly they have some sort of morality. it depends how you define the term morality, but clearly they have some sense of right and wrong and decency, and what I think that was when I started to bring up to him the idea of, nuclear fallout and 5-year-olds growing up. There will be no more Jesus, there will be no more Muhammad or whatever, but they will form some sort of society, and it will have some sort of rules and parameters, and people in that society will agree to follow these rules and parameters, and some people will break those rules and parameters and pay the price for it. So, and as society expands, you'll have more outliers and psychopaths and killers, and then you'll have more cops and security, and that's kind of how society will evolve.
You'll have other religions that would show up, and that's why I say that 100% there will be a religion that is being created.
See, I don't disagree with you, but I would say the religion would probably be born just because they would be at that phase of civilization where they don't have an understanding of science and why things happen, and
But I'm saying that even if you have science, it's still going to be created, because there's still going to be stuff that we don't really understand.
And that's when the religious realm and the spiritual realm falls into place, when we don't understand things.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's just a shame, because I struggle with it myself, but it's like human beings struggle with this idea of just sitting there and honestly saying, like, I don't know something.
Yeah.
Like even the dumbest dumb fuck people in the country, in the world, they'll still be like, well, I know this, and I know that for sure, damn sure, and it's like, they couldn't, they're like the least educated, they know nothing about nothing, and they're so adamant that they know some shit, you know what I mean? And because they just cannot, I guess, come to a place of humility where they just honestly say, I think it's partially humility, but it's also kind of bravery, because it's scary to go to that place and be like, I don't know. That's a scary place to reside. And I think that's why most people don't go there.
Yeah, it's scary to go to a place where you don't matter. That's it. You don't matter. Your existence doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, so there's the I don't know thing, but then kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. So going back to the meaning in life, right? So I think that might have been something we talked about on New Year's Eve as well, where I was like, I think at the time I was really thinking about this idea of meaninglessness, and how I feel like if I were to bring that up and mention it to people would be worried for me and think that I'm talking like I'm suicidal or something.
Exactly.
Like if I say life is meaningless. But really, I'm like, that doesn't have to mean the end of the world or existence for me, that if there's no meaning. I think what we're talking about survival mechanisms and the tricks our mind plays and consciousness and all that, it ties in with this idea of the fact that there's no meaninglessness. That's an awful idea, and it's very uncomfortable, and it's very upsetting. Therefore, our consciousness and our minds will go to a place where we ascribe meaning to it as a survival mechanism, So when I say, oh, life could very well be meaningless, like when people ask that question, people ask the fundamental questions about life and philosophy and religion, right? Like, why am I here? Why are we here? Or like, what happens after we die? And they ask these questions like there's supposed to be some definitive correct answer about them. And they can't just accept the fact, because it's such a harsh notion, that maybe there is no answer to those questions. Can you sit with that and be okay with that? And I think most people cannot sit there and be okay with, there's no meaning to my life. I mean, you could sit there and, like you just said, like, quickly sum it up and say, how can you say there's such a great, profound meaning to your life when 100 years from now, in billions of years of existence, right? just a teeny little drop in the billions of years, like 100 years from now,
Yeah.
nobody will even know your name or who you are or anything, you know, which makes me think, oh, well, that's why people have children. This is so that people will remember and you'll have descendants and all that stuff. But let's say for all the people who don't have kids out there and don't do anything famous, they're not in a movie that's captured or make a piece of music that lives on. Like, you know, most average people, like,
But
they die and they're forgotten a generation from now even.
so even with the generational thing, when people even tell me like about their descendants and stuff like that, like before I came to the way that I'm thinking now, is like when I learned about how the Black Plague is, the descendants of the Black Plague is how we're able to formulate things to start having a cure for AIDS. It was like a mutated gene from the Black Plague, and it's these bacteria that's inside those people. That's what scientists have been using. So when you talk about like a legacy, your name is not inscribed on that. It's just the bacteria that you've gone through.
Okay.
So that means it's just a survival mechanism. So like your legacy is just the different bacteria that's in you. So if it comes down to just that, then like
in that particular example, sure.
Yeah, in that particular example. But like after I learned that, when I started looking at legacy, I was like, my action is not inherently what's needed. It's just my survival to go through all of this environmental changes. And then if you think about it, it's like it's the bacteria that's it's collecting this information of like how these bacteria survived over the years. Because when a kid is born, it's born with a copy of the healing codes from your bacteria. So that's what's being passed down.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could care less about you being able to cook, draw, whatever.
It's all about survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like it was like based on that, I was like, okay, so like if it's just about that, and it's multiple like.
That's so harsh. Again, like what we're saying, that's so harsh and non-poetic and unromantic.
Yeah.
That like nobody wants. Even atheists, a lot of atheists don't want to think like that. They want to think, oh well, you know, I'm going to live this great life and then I die and that's it. But like, oh, but you know, my life still has meaning in the sense of, you know, I had kids or I created a film that people will watch later and I've inspired people or I've loved the people around me and then they'll in turn love people and they're, you know, even atheists will talk like that a lot of the time, you know, but it's just funny because like, it's like everybody is dodging and avoiding this harsh reality that nobody wants to accept, that we're just, you know, there's that you don't matter. There's no meaning to life. We're all just microbes that have evolved to gather together onto one glob called a person. And, you know, we're just on this rock in the middle of a universe of black holes and death and nothingness. And, yeah, nobody wants to accept that. Imagine that.
And that's the best way for the microbes to move forward, is to not have people accept that.
Right.
So then goes back to, do we have free will?
Oh man, it's like free will. Like the idea of it doesn't even make sense in the context of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and that's why now you're understanding the way that I think and why I have those questions.
So in a way, it's not even like how questions are phrased, but it's like, what's the relevancy of the question you're asking in the first place?
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. Huh. Wow. Yeah, this is good shit, man. I'm gonna have to, because I'm like, this is like a 3-hour recording.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna like hit stop. And so actually one of the devices I was recording on, it ran out of disk space because it was on an external mic. So one of the 3 mics went down like 30 minutes in. So I still have the iPad recording and I have the computer recording. So I'm going to listen to both. And I'm a little worried about the computer recording because it's using my good mic, but sometimes it's like it seems too quiet. So, because I'm looking at the meter and it's barely bouncing even when I'm talking into it. So I don't even know how much of your voice it picked up. I mean, I have the phone, you're talking on speakerphone right below the mic, but I'll have to check and see how it is. But I think the iPad recording will probably be fine because I've recorded phone calls when I'm calling customer service and whatnot. And it's recorded pretty decently. But yeah, so hopefully one of these two recordings comes through pretty good because I think we have there's some really good content in here. I'm gonna cut it down. In a sense, I feel like. Do you ever listen to Joe Rogan's podcast?
Yeah.
I feel like this was kind of like that, where we talk for a really long time. It's about a lot of different things, but I like his podcast because it's just kind of like very free flowing, and it'll be interesting because this is kind of a first episode, and I'll feel it out and kind of like how topical I want to make it or like how rigid or structured. I don't know, but I like this. I like talking because I feel like kind of the flow of the conversation led us to that stuff at the end that I feel like was really like that's golden. Like that's really interesting stuff. So I'll probably edit out like some of like just our work talk and stuff. But yeah, I think this is cool. As long as this recording comes out good. Like, how do you feel?
Well, I'm fine. Like I could finally like express to someone other than Vivian like my thought.
Yeah.
And
it will be interesting to see like how people react to this too. Like,
Well, like just like you said, whenever I've gotten the question of meaning to life and legacy, and I'm like, yeah, I don't see life has a meaning. I'm not down about it.
See, that's the thing. That's the separation.
Yeah.
That most people would not even understand. Even I wouldn't understand that in the past because I would think, what do you mean no meaning to life? What? That's sad. That's depressing. But I'm like, it doesn't have to necessarily be inherently tied together very tightly.
Yeah. And like, I think it's fascinating that there is no meaning to life. And I think it's fascinating that there's a possibility that the whole idea of consciousness is false. It's like, it's a byproduct. It's something to make us keep going forward. So I think of those things as just, it's interesting to me, but it doesn't mean that like, well, what does it matter now? Like, I mean, no, like I enjoy the stuff I do.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, with the conclusions that you and I are kind of coming to there, like, doesn't that also kind of make you feel like more of a hedonist? Like, just, you're here for a short time, you exist, you may as well just enjoy life and what you're doing here, and that's it.
Yeah, because, like, part of it is just, like, enjoyment, and you, like, care about the things you care about. Like, you just try to just, I think it's also, like, when you try to, like, get everybody to be okay, you're just helping the bacteria move along as well.
That's what it's all about at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Help the bacteria move along. Oh my God. But yeah, I also feel like it does take a lot of pressure off of life because I'm a person who was raised very perfectionist. Like, there's a lot of pressure. Don't mess up. Don't fail. Don't let your GPA drop below 4.0. Like all of these kind of things. And you got to meet somebody, you got to get married, got to have kids. You got to do all these things. And if those things aren't lining up in your life, that means you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, I was raised like that too.
Yeah,
but then I realized that, like, when I fail, I'm actually learning when I fail. So
right.
I just can't fail to the point where I can't recover or learn from it.
Yeah.
So, like, failing to me is, like, an important process.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with a couple people in recent months where it's like, this is a problem with Western, like American education. Like the education I got, it taught me the completely wrong kind of fundamental lesson number one,
Yeah,
which is, you got to get an A. You can't fail a test.
yeah,
And I'm like, that's the exact wrong thing to teach children or people growing up, because then you're never going to try something that you're going to fail at because you're so afraid of failing at something, but you're never going to learn and grow that way.
yeah. And
So
all of it is it's not growth anyway. It's memorization.
right, it's not critical thinking. It's not right.
Yeah. So it's like it was.
It's like a double.
After I realized that, it was when it was like kind of like the sweater has become like the threads are being taken apart. So like that's when I started like actually thinking about other things, and I was more comfortable with my thought processes. Because my friends would used to just see me sit by myself, just looking, staring into space, and they're like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just thinking." And it's like I couldn't formulate that at that time. I couldn't formulate like, here's what I'm thinking about. But it's like after it's only been like the past 12, 15 years that I'm able to formulate and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. And that's part of the reason why I'm happy with Viv, because she's heavily Christian.
Oh, really?
Well,
Still?
I wouldn't say heavily, but
Okay.
she's Christian.
Okay.
And like I support her with her beliefs, but I have her think about her beliefs critically, and she enjoys that. And yeah, it's fine. That's a part of who she is. That's the person that I married.
Yeah.
And for me, she knows that there's the only chance of me being converted to Christianity is like that being comes down and say, hey, listen, we have to talk. And that's not going to happen, but that's the only way. This is where I stand with stuff. So I'm comfortable with her doing her thing. She gets uncomfortable with me sometimes.
Does she wish you would believe more like how she does?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does. But she knows that's not a possibility.
Yeah. Unless the Lord descended from the sky and showed up to you and was like, Damien.
Yeah. And then I will say, oh, Zeus, how's it going?
Maybe Zeus is the true God.
So you could bring up any god you want.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's actually something I've been doing a lot lately on Instagram and in the comments on YouTube and whatnot. Is like you get into these little mini debates with people about God and religion and going to hell and blah blah blah, and I just keep replying with Santa. I say the same thing back to them, except instead of the word God, I just use Santa or Thor.
Yeah.
And what are they going to say back to me? Like, what can you say back to me when I'm just throwing the same thing you just said to me in your face?
Yeah, and you're just using a different God.
Right. And I'm like, well, you can't prove your God or Jesus and any more than I can prove my Santa or not Santa. So, like, where does that get us? Nowhere. So it kind of, the point is to kind of illustrate the emptiness of their words by saying, like, one thing I've noticed lately is, like, I'll post memes and things on Confusianity, and some of the more spirited commenters, they just immediately go to hell in the afterlife. Like we're talking about real tangible life issues and topics and things here now, and they immediately just cut straight to like, well, after you die, you're going to burn in hell for eternity, or you got the wrong religion, Islam is the right one, and, you'll find out after you're dead. And I'm like, what a lame argument. Like, you can say nothing about the experience of this life, you have to wait until after everybody's dead to have your punchline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's the same thing about like because Vivian early on in our relationship, we talked about heaven, and I was like, yeah, heaven sounds great for one person.
for one person.
Because each individual has a different idea of what heaven is.
Right.
So we're not all going to be together.
It's interesting, like, in terms of books and reading. C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Great Divorce. Ask Vivian, actually, if does she read much Christian books?
She does. I don't know which she's read.
Okay, well, ask her if she's read The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a really fascinating book. If you have time to read a book, it would be really interesting for you to read that book. It's about heaven and hell. It's just interesting because the way they portray hell is kind of like this gray place, you know, devoid of human relationship and love and everything precious about life. But all it is though is that you can have anything you want. Like, you just imagine yourself a house and you have a house. And what ends up happening is people imagine yourself a house, and then somebody imagines their house right next to yours, and then you get annoyed by neighbors or whatever, and then you're just like, oh, you know what, I'm going to walk further out. And they mentioned Napoleon in hell there or whatever, and he's like millions of miles away. He's been there long enough, and he's been so aggravated by other people that he just kept going further and further away, and that's hell. And I remember back when I was a Christian, I read it, and I was like, wow, this is a really interesting idea. I never really would have thought about it that way. Because most people, if you think like, oh, you could have anything you want, like, that sounds like heaven to me, right? But the way they portrayed it, I'm like, yeah, I guess I could see how that's kind of hellish. If you were just annoyed by other people and, you know, there was no relationship and no, you know, love.
Yeah, that's why I said heaven is for one person. Like, everyone has their own individual heaven. So when it comes to that, like, the dynamic of the people that you like is that, yeah, they're going to have different views, and sometimes they're going to piss you off, but, like, you're able to talk with them about it. And
like, how could there be a heaven where everybody feels so awesome and amazing at the same time? Is that
exactly? That's
right.
That's not happening.
Right.
That's like maybe like at a party, there's like this 10-minute window where everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Yeah, and other than that, the entire time it's fluctuating.
Right.
So, like, imagine that for an eternity. After a while, it's just, like, annoying, man.
Well, I don't know about that. Like, because, like, when we talk about this life, right? And I've heard a lot of people say, like, the idea of living forever is, like, a awful idea. Like, that's a nightmare.
Not for me.
And I say not for me either. Like, for me, I'm like, I want to do a billion things, and I only have another 30 years to squeeze it in whatever I can. I mean, I'm the kind of person, as a creative person, like, every day I come up with new ideas. And every day, and I'm like, I don't have the time to pursue these things. So for me, an eternal life, an eternity, where I have freedom to just kind of create and do things, like, I'm always going to come up with new ideas. And there'll always be new experiences.
You know what I mean? Any language I would learn?
Right, like languages, and I'd go to every country, climb every mountain, do all the things. And, like, there's so many things to do that even after you did literally everything on the earth, and this is just talking about...
It's constantly changing.
Yeah, it's constantly changing, good point. And even if I did everything on the earth, by the time it comes time to circle back and be like, oh, I guess it's time to do something I did. It's like, that's something I did like 40 years ago. Like, climb Mount Everest, I did it 40 years ago, but, like, it's new for me now because I haven't done it in so long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's just the earth. Imagine if heaven is this infinite space where, you know, it's infinite possibilities and people and infinite time. Like, to me, that sounds like a pretty awesome heaven. For me, I would love that. So basically, like, this life, this earth, but, like, in a place where I'm not sick, or I'm not struggling, or I'm not achy, or I'm not, aging or basically approaching death, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I'm like, I'm excited about that idea for heaven. But like a lot of times back when I was in church and they would describe heaven, honestly, I wouldn't ever say this out loud, but I'm thinking it the whole time because they're talking about standing there and singing praises to the Lord for, forever. And I'm like, dude, I don't even like, every time I used to go to church and we have to stand up and sing like 4 hymns in a row, I'm like, I just want to sit down. Like my feet are tired. I'm tired of singing this song. I just want to sit down. And can we get on with it? And I'm like, that's like for 7 minutes. The idea of standing there singing praises to the Lord for eternity to me is like hell.
Yeah, but to the Lord, he's having a ball.
Right.
Heaven's for one person.
Oh my God. Oh man. All right. Let's end it on that note. I think I gotta include some of that in there too. But cool, man. This has been great. I'll work on the edit, and I'll let you know how things go.
I hope this has been enlightening for you.
Anyway, stick around. We'll be back in a couple weeks for episode 3, where I interview my sister. In case you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Confusianity podcast on your platform of choice. Currently available on YouTube at youtube.com/Confusianity and pretty much all the other major podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. For a list of all available platforms, visit anchor.fm/Confusianity. Until next time, my friends.